just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe. Oh, fire. Oh, fire. Oh, fire. Fire, fire. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith.
Ready, Jim? Here, welcome to RenéMarie Stroke of Luck. I'm RenéMarie. And once again, Judy has created really a wonderful show that's very interesting as far as my thoughts. We have someone, Bob, who didn't live a healthy lifestyle. And then we have JoAnn, who did live a healthy lifestyle. And it's very interesting, the dynamic. And I'm sure Judy didn't even put the two together when she was doing the booking, but Judy somehow always has a way to create something that's very meaningful and impactful. And it's really going to be a very interesting conversation because they both live two different, completely different lifestyles. But before we get to Judy reading the her press that she always writes up so eloquently, I want to share something with you. You know, and it's just a life lesson, just because that's what I'm getting that I should share today. And it really is the value of this show to me. I had a really tough week. Very, very, very busy at work. It's, you know, the summer season is always busy for me. And plus I got a cold, and I'm much better now, but I got a cold and I wasn't feeling well and all that kind of stuff. And I really was drained. And then someone came to me and said to me, I was stressed. And someone came to me and said, I don't want to share who it is, but a family or friend said to me they had to work a little bit overtime in a hospital because they were dealing with, you know, something at work. And it really came to me, the importance of this show to really bring me back to what my purpose is in life and the value of life, and bring me back to that place where I had the stroke. And remember that life is a gift. And this line in my book, life is a gift, because that's what I feel. And all the other stuff and dramas, and I don't say they're meaningless. I say they're valuable as in the moment, but things can all be fixed. But when your health is not well, then that's the important thing that takes precedent. So I just want to really remind everybody today at this moment to enjoy their lives and not to be so caught up in the everyday things. Although like I say, they are important. They're important to the person that's dealing with them at the moment. But just be kind and work through it and really try not to speak until you think about what it is you're saying to anyone. Sometimes, and I just read that, I just heard this somewhere, that, and I knew this as a fact, that words can't be taken back. Although people will apologize to you, you apologize, you make up, those words are still out in the world. And that, along with the written word, the written word is documented, it's implanted in the universe. And so, I ask or suggest that, you take a little bit of time to think about what you're writing before you write it. Think about it, be kind. And once again, we always talk about, it's not so much what you're saying or what you're writing, it's how you're bringing it forth. And we all know that, like I said, and we're going to talk about with Bob and JoAnn and Judy and Jim in the back office, in the back studio, that life is challenging, especially now in this world. It's so crazy the way that things are. I always said this a long time ago, but it just seems to be evolving more, that there's no boundaries anymore. Life is just, people are just, in the moment, and really not talking kindly to one another, and not enjoying their lives with their family and friends. And the bottom line is that that's what's important: your family and friends and other people. Be kind to everybody, because everybody is human and everybody has feelings. And even though they're not coming to you with the best moment or the best state, they don't intend, they don't do it, they don't, my landscapers here, they don't do it intentionally. So I'm going to let Judy read. Thank you so much. That was what I needed to share today, because I really thought it was an important. I'm going to put my computer on mute, and I'm going to let Judy read the press.
That was a very good opening, and I agree with you 100%. Bob Barth has worked in logistics and supply chain management his entire life. It was a stressful career, and on the morning of August 31st, 2011, he was getting ready for work. He suffered a hemorrhagic stroke, a brain bleed, and was completely paralyzed on the right side of his body. He was rushed to the hospital, ICU, and after CT scan of his brain and being told of his condition, with contributing factors of being very much overweight, with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, high stress job, and being a heavy smoker, the answer was all of the above. Bob will discuss his experiences with physical and occupational therapy and the support he received from his wife, Sharon, and his family, who played an inspiring role throughout his recovery. To this day, Bob strives to bring awareness to potential stroke patients and provide hope and inspiration to stroke warriors through Facebook groups, particularly Don't Count Me Out stroke groups. JoAnn Glim, stroke survivor, author, Trapped from Within, disc jockey, copywriter, WSDM FM Chicago, communications, 40 plus years as a freelance writer, including award-winning weekly columns in 14 Northern Illinois newspapers, and also writing one-liners for nationally known comedians, shares with our audience her stroke story, Trapped Within. Began in the mind of a rational human being, awakening to what seemed to be a normal day, and then by lunchtime, she was fighting for her life. Paralyzed on the entire right side of her body, unable to swallow without choking, unable to carry on a conversation, unable to see clearly, unable to walk. Her body was replaced with a broken down replica. Her well-traveled world was now a 3-foot by 7-foot electronically operated hospital bed. She was, trapped within. Her days turned into months before slivers of triumph in speech, physical, and occupational therapy slowly began to render signs of improvement. Gradually, after 2 years, sprint towards recovery, she became a new, altered form of herself, a little slower, a lot more cautious, abundantly grateful for her life itself and at peace with God. JoAnn offers our audience encouragement to stroke survivors, hope to their families and caregivers, and understanding to medical professionals or anyone interested in knowing what it's like to be trapped within your own body. I'd like to welcome both Bob and JoAnn to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob and JoAnn, for joining us today. And once again, I apologize. I hear my landscaper in the backdrop, and sorry about that. Life, life. It's just like we were talking before, life. But life never gets in our way, right, Judy? Life and Bob and JoAnn, you just keep forging forward.
I just want to mention one other thing that I left out, which is both Bob and JoAnn will give hope and inspiration to all in their determination to recover and to be active in life once again.
And Judy, could you share the book that you found Bob in?
Yes. It's Finding Yourself After Stroke.
Perfect. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read it.
And there are many stories in there. Most of the people are from Australia.
Wow. Oh, that's the Australia book that you were
Yes.
talking about. We had another guest on the show as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I have a number of them are trying to figure out when it would be possible to do it, maybe 8 o'clock in the evening our time and a decent hour their time.
Good, good. So I know the proper etiquette would be to talk to JoAnn first, because she is, we always believe women. I don't know. That's pretty prejudiced, right?
We usually have the women first.
Yeah. But because of the situation where 80% of strokes can be prevented and 20% of strokes is just life, I really want to begin with Bob, because Bob didn't live a healthy lifestyle. So Bob, I'm going to let you share your story with our audience, and then we'll talk a little bit.
Sure. I was involved in supply chain management and logistics, doing a lot of traveling, going back and forth to Dallas, coming home on the weekends in the summertime. And then they would send me to Chatham, Ontario in the winter to help those operations as well. It was very stressful, and I finally told my superiors that I've got to get home, and you need to find me something in the Detroit area, because I just can't do this traveling anymore. So they did. They didn't want to lose me. I didn't want to lose them. And they found me a position here in Detroit. And once I turned 50, they let me go. I was had a target on my back, I guess, and it was 20. I had 25 years seniority, 5 weeks vacation. Long story short, I took a job as a recruiter for a trucking company. And as it turned out, that was probably the best job I ever had, because I was able to provide work for people and hire them. And I love doing that. I was getting ready for work one morning. We had a Wednesday morning business meeting that all of us recruiters had to report where we were in the stages of hiring each driver. And I just started getting ready for work. I went to open up my cabinet door to shave, and I realized I couldn't move my right hand. And then I realized that all of my weight was on my left side, all 340 pounds of me. I called into my wife and I said, I don't know what's wrong, but I have no feeling on my right side at all. I can't move my right arm. I have no feeling in my leg. I was tempted to try and step on my right foot, put weight on it. Thankfully, I didn't. Sharon was going to help me back into the bed and just sleep it off or rest. But we decided that wasn't a good idea either. So I said, let's just set me down slow and call 911. Within a minute of her phone call, it was almost like the ambulance was waiting right there. We heard the siren. Within 5 minutes, they're wheeling me out of the front door in the gurney and then rushing me into ICU to the nearest hospital. And the nurse came out after the CAT scan with a very sad look on her face, and she said, you've had a stroke, and it's a bad one. So I had to wait all day for an MRI. They confirmed it with the MRI, and nobody could give us any success stories. We needed to hear about stroke survivors that actually made it or got through this, and we just couldn't do it. If I had a quarter, I guess, for every doctor that came in and said, well, everybody's different. Don't know if you'll get anything back or not. Just got to keep trying.
That's sad that they didn't not give you unexpected recovery, but they shouldn't have ripped out of you the hope that a stroke patient and their family around them needs to recover, to survive at that point.
I had
That's
one.
that's what happened with my dad. They said that he wasn't going to make it. I fired the doctor.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I had one nurse that did say, as the blood begins to reduce in your brain, it's very possible that you'll get some sort of movement back, but no promises. At the same time I had my stroke, there was a famous Dallas Cowboy football player that had a stroke on the same day. And I remember watching that on the news and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy had a stroke as well. I can't remember his name, but he was pretty popular. 5 days later, he passed away. And that just sent chills down our spine. You know, we made arrangements just in case something happened. Who would take care of my wife? But I spent a week in ICU, and then the insurance companies got involved and they had me transferred to a local hospital here in the Detroit area, where they found out I was a Detroit Tiger fan. So the nurse had the Tiger game on TV when I first came wheeling in. So we became buddies right away. And we had such a great relationship with the nurses, the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, all of the assistants. But it would take that, they wanted me to get out of my bed and get into my wheelchair. And in order to do that, it would take 5 people, at least one man and four others, 4 of the nurses.
Bob, I don't think we shared with the audience your weight situation. You shared it with me in the Zoom green room, but share with them a little bit about your weight situation.
Yeah, I was 340 pounds at the time. And they would have to call so many people to come in and get me out of my bed and get me into my wheelchair. I would sit in the wheelchair for about 20 minutes and my butt would get sore. And then I'd hit that little button, okay, time to get me back in bed. So I'd have to wait about a half hour before they found enough people to to get me out of my wheelchair and into my bed. But the hospital food wasn't bad, but it helped me start lose weight.
That's good. So I'm going to stop you there because I want JoAnn to chime in. We have a baseline to your story. And JoAnn, tell us a little bit about your story, your stroke experience, what you were doing prior, what you've done in the past, the same way Bob did, and share with us about your stroke experience. And I will share with everybody, I just want to remind everybody, this is a completely different scenario than Bob, right? JoAnn lived a healthy lifestyle. And tell us, also bring in your mom as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, about 6 months before I had my stroke, my husband and I had retired. We both had careers in Chicago. I had a very checkered past when it came to my career because there was a great deal of it that was spent in communication in both writing and being on air. And that has followed me, and I've really appreciated the doors that have opened and the different things I've been able to do because of it. I think that prepared me for a lot that I do working with stroke survivors now. But in the meantime, my husband had worked for AT&T for 30 years, and we both decided to retire when we turned 50. He had a lot of family that lived in Florida, so we moved down here to a brand new home, and we treated the first 6 months as though we were on vacation. We wanted to really get to know Florida, enjoy it, and feel comfortable in our new environment. Now, part of what I did when I was working was I also worked for Kelly Services. I had started out just as an office worker, took advantage of all of their training programs and worked myself up into a position of management, and was invited to work at Baxter Healthcare, hiring their short-term employment, everything from engineers down to light industrial. I loved the job and the people that I worked with. So it was kind of hard to say goodbye in one way, but another way it wasn't, because I knew that when I got down here, that was something they could transfer with me. So it came after about 6 months, we decided it was time to really begin to find some employment down here, maybe on a part-time basis, so we could still enjoy where we lived. And we were also very interested in volunteering, doing things that would be helpful to other people. So we thought we really had our lives in order. Well, I accepted a one-day position at Tropicana in the marketing department. And the morning of my stroke, I drove over there. I was thinking of all the things that could be facing me and what I needed to do to, make sure that I remembered all of the training that I had. And I wasn't nervous as much as excited about doing it. So I got there, and it started as most places do. But the person that I was working for came out in a panic because the person that worked with him had forgotten to order the lunches for that afternoon. And he was involved in a major meeting with 13 people that were here from Chicago. So I told him not to worry about it, that I would go over and, I'd order something for him and go over and pick it up and bring it back. It wasn't a big deal. So it turned out to be a big deal. The guy didn't want to do it because 13 lunches within 20 minutes, was really asking a lot of him, but he did. He came through. And I went over there and was sitting at the cafe to pick things up, and he called when they were ready, and I walked up to ask him how much I owed for the lunches, and it came out sounding like gibberish. And I remember looking at him, and he had this look. He wasn't sure if he was surprised or insulted, from the way I was talking to him. And I tried to say it one more time, and the same thing happened. So I took the credit card and just handed it to him. And he had some people help me to bring this stuff out to my car. Well, when I was walking out to the car, my legs started to feel a little bit like rubber. And remembering what had happened to my mother, I realized at that moment that I was having a stroke. So I got into.
I think that was pretty intuitive if you're having a stroke and having a brain attack, to be able to comprehend that you yourself may be having one.
Yeah. It was funny because my thinking, at least to me, seemed to be very clear. And I've always been someone who tries to plan for all scenarios when I'm in a situation that's new or different. And so I knew I couldn't talk, but I could hope to get information out. I could just fall on the ground and they'd figure that one out. Or I could drive back to Tropicana and drop off the lunches and then go to the hospital. I chose the latter. And Tropicana was probably about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. And so I thought, if I stay in the right-hand lane, there was a place down here called the Red Barn that I know a lot of people that have been to the Bradenton area know about. It was a very famous flea market, had burned down about 2 weeks before this happened. So my plan was, if something really went haywire, I would just drive up onto that land and people would find the car sitting in the ashes. But nothing like that happened. I made it back to Tropicana. I got out of the car, and there was a man that was walking up the same time I was, and so he took basically all of the boxes with him and brought them into the room, the reception room. By that time, my hand, I didn't have function of my right hand in the car either. Every time I would put it onto the steering wheel, it would just fall and sit alongside me. So I made it into the reception room. I called my husband because I really wanted him to know, to meet me at the hospital, that I was really sick. And I figured, these guys are big. They can walk down the stairs and pick up their own darn lunches. So I called my husband and I said, I'm sick. Meet me at the hospital. And there was this long pause. And all of a sudden he said, I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. Well, I burst into tears, and all I could think of is I need to say something to him that he and I would know. And so I blurted out our anniversary. And he said, what on earth is wrong with you? And all I said was, I'm sick. And I hung up.
And at that time, there was no caller ID?
No.
I know if my
No.
girls call me and I have it plugged in, like,
Yes.
I would know it's them, whether they're talking or not. I would know they were, yeah.
No, this happened 25 years ago.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we were living back in the dark ages.
It's not the dark ages. That was life then,
Yeah.
And how important technology, and it's wonderful on one hand, it's tragedy on the other, but so go ahead. Sorry about that.
So anyway, I was watching the people coming in because the lunch hour was almost over. And I absolutely hate gawkers. And I really wanted to come back to Tropicana if I survived whatever was going on. So I decided not to call 911 or ask them to do that. And I looked at my car and it was sitting out in the right in front of so I didn't have far to walk to get to the car, and it was still running. So I decided to drive myself to the hospital, which was about 2 more miles away from where I was. Now, I want to tell anybody who is watching this, I thought I was being very logical in what I was doing. I'm a lot better now. I don't have an addled mind anymore like I did that day. So please, anyone who is facing any type of symptoms at all, do not do what I did.
And if you don't mind me interjecting here, I think the important lesson for everybody, one of the important lessons for everybody in this moment is that someone saw you struggling to talk. So that's why it's so crucial for everybody to know the be fast, right?
Right.
Because if that gentleman, he could have just said, you know what, sit down, and went and called 911 or called somebody.
Right, in the
That-
restaurant
Right.
or
So
the
we're-
reception room of the hotel.
Right, so we're not placing blame, we're just using this specific moment that how important it is to know the signs. I had someone over my house one day and she was slurring as well. I said, oh my God, I said, the world I'm in, how could I not capture this moment? And I called her husband and he came over. So, so the bottom line is that we all have to be proactive in saving someone's life. And if you call 911 for any particular reason, I think the 911 drivers would be happy if it's no really reason to call them, but they'd rather get a call to be proactive in saving not only your life, JoAnn, but what if you got into an accident when you got into the car? Those
Right.
I mean, the whole scenario is really crucial to think about, so that's what I wanted to.
And be
And
fast is balance. If your balance is off, if something is happening with your eyesight, F is for face. If your face is distorted, if your arms cannot be both extended out, if your speech is garbled, and T for time. Time is of the essence because every minute you waste is brain cells dying. That's what be fast means.
And and it's so simple. It's so simple to remember, and really to not be such in a hurry in life that we miss those important signs, that when somebody's talking to you, just be comprehensive of what could be occurring. So that's really important. So go ahead, JoAnn. I'm sorry to jump in.
No, it's interesting, and I'm grateful that you did say that. I made it to the hospital. I was more a nervous wreck because I parked where an ambulance is supposed to, and the person that goes through the parking lot to make sure that you're not in to make sure that you're in the proper place, stopped me and told me I couldn't park there. Well, by this time I'm standing next to my car. My shoulder is drooping. My hand is, just there. My face has begun with the droop on the side. And I told him, I think I'm having a stroke. And so he looked at me. I mean, he obviously registered what he saw. And he said, okay. He said, don't worry about your car. I'll make sure it's okay. And drove off. And so I thought, it would be nice if you helped me in.
Right.
But by him doing that made me think, well, maybe I'm not as bad off as I think I am. So I walked into the hospital the emergency room was very busy. The whoosh at the door opening didn't even make it register on the reception there to look up. There was a nurse over there that was busy doing something and she never even turned around. So I stood right in the middle there with everything I had left. I said, I think I'm having a stroke. And she turned around and looked at me. By that time, someone else grabbed me under the arms. And when he did that, my legs just collapsed. And I think it was more from I made it, you know, and they put me onto a gurney. And from there is where my stroke story.
JoAnn, you had a hemorrhagic stroke as well, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I
So
I just want to bring something because I hear my landscaper coming. That really the moral to this story is you call 911, right?
absolutely right. Yes.
Just have to wait because my landscapers. JoAnn, tell us a little bit more about you or what happened once you got in.
Well, I don't have much recollection of the hospital at all. I know that the one thing that I did want to do was to please just stay alive long enough to tell my husband one more time that I loved
I mean, that's so important to share with you. I always say this. I'm not one particularly to say how much that I love people, but in my world, my actions, I hope, speak louder than my words, because no matter what, I'm there unconditionally, like my father used to be for me. You know, my father never used to say, I love you so much. I knew without one single aspect of a doubt that if I needed my father for anything, he would be there in 2 seconds flat. And his persona was never to get mad or to question. And he used to look at a situation and try to resolve it. Okay, this is what's happened. How do we fix it? How do we fix it? Rather than you shouldn't have did this, you should don't waste all that energy on all those silly, meaningless things. It's like, you know, how can we fix this situation? And the fact when I, you know, in my world, when I see people constantly saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then to see the way they treat each other, I think to myself, what is love to them? What is love? Love is, in my world, love is supporting them, loving them through it, being there unconditionally, spending time with people that you love. I mean, those are the things that show love, not these quick verbiage words, because words are meaningless if you don't stand behind it. I see you smiling, Bob. Do you have any thoughts on my words?
Oh, absolutely. You never know what somebody's going through. You don't know what their story is. People look at me when I walk and they know something happened to me, but there's so many others that you don't know their story. So be kind, be nice, treat them with respect, and you'll get that return respect right back to you.
Yeah. So Bob, tell us a little bit more now you're in the hospital, and we know your weight situation, and you lost 40 pounds because of hospital food, which was a gift. So how long were you in the hospital? What were the next steps? How did you face recovery with your wife?
I was in ICU for a week, and then they transported me to Garden City Hospital here in Michigan, where the physical therapist I got, his name was Marcin. He was Polish born, big guy. And my occupational therapist named Mary, she was a drill sergeant type of therapist. Neither one of them cut me any slack. they couldn't get anything on my right side to move for quite some time. It was probably a week into the hospital where my wife had just left. And I got a knock on the door of my hospital room. I had to keep my hospital room door closed because there was this real clanky, squeaky file cabinet just outside my hospital door that every doctor and nurse would open, and it would just, so I had to keep my door closed. So I get a knock on my door, and my wife and I, we became almost family, I guess, with all of the rehab assistants, the nurses, the doctors. We knew everybody. This knock came at the door that night, and an angel walked in dressed as a nurse. And I'd never seen her before. She didn't know me. She didn't look at my chart, but she called me by name. And she said, Bob, if you just, my hand was in a fist and I couldn't open it. And what the therapist would do would have me stretch, but I still couldn't open it. And the angel said, if you just take that fist, just hold it right up to your face. Imagine that index finger moving, and then try as hard as you can to get that index finger to move. Just keep doing that. And she says, eventually that finger will move. So I practiced that. I kept doing that. I did all my stretches for the next couple of days. I told my wife about the nurse that had come in, and it was a couple of days later, my wife had just left and gone home, and I'm doing it again. I'm watching, every chance I had, I'd practice it. And I got this. And I threw down my arm and I grabbed the phone on my bed, and I called my wife and I said, I got my finger to move. So
Such a small thing, such
yeah.
a small thing that the general public wouldn't comprehend what a huge milestone that is for you.
It was.
What a huge milestone.
So I got to doing this, and pretty soon I could start to move my other fingers. And of course I was up all night and I was working at it. I was practicing it. By the time the morning came along, I hadn't received any sleep at all, but I could actually have a grip. And I wanted that because my dad, I wanted to be able to shake his hand when he would come in to visit me. So we made, of course, when I had my fingers moving and I'm moving my hand, I'm hitting the call button about every 5 minutes and bringing the nurses in or the assistants in to show them, and they're all happy. And I asked them not to tell my occupational therapist because it happened on a Saturday and she was off until Monday. And I said, please keep it a secret. So my occupational therapist came in on Monday, and she says, I hear you got something that you want to say to me or you want to show me. I said, yeah. So I grabbed her arm and I started pulling it down to my hand. She said, where are you going with my hand, Bob? And I said, I grabbed it. And when I grabbed it, she just started crying and gave me a big hug. And she says, now can you release it? Oh yeah. And it released. And so from then on, it was just a daily routine of practicing stretching, doing everything that the therapist told me to do. By the time I left Garden City Hospital, I was supposed to be there for about 6 weeks. They kicked me out in about 3 weeks and sent me over to an acute rehab center where I spent the remainder of my time in the hospital at that facility. It was about 6 weeks. And I met my new occupational therapist. His name was Bob. And Bob had muscles on his muscles. I'm thinking, this is my occupational therapist. I'd love to have him as my physical therapist. So he worked with me, and then he took me into the physical therapy room and he introduced me to my physical therapist. And she was about 4'9", and I was still probably 300 pounds at the time. And she was from the Philippines, so there was a language barrier. And she would talk to my foot, and I couldn't hear her. What? So Bob came in the next day, my occupational therapist. By the way, I'm looking around in the rehab room while she's working with me, and I'm seeing a couple of these big guys, physical therapists, working with patients. And Bob came in the next day, and I said, Bob, I don't want to get her in trouble. I said, but if I fall on this little girl, I'll hurt her bad. And I want someone that's gonna push me. He said, okay. So he comes in the next day, he says, I got a new physical therapist for you. So after he works with me, he takes me over to Steve. And Steve is bigger than Bob. He's got more muscles than Bob does. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. So he looks me in the eye and he said, I'm going to work you very hard. You're not going to like what I do to you. You're probably not going to like me, but believe me, this is for your own good. And I'm like, okay, come on, bring it on. Well, within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I guess, he had me stretched and twisted up like a pretzel, and I'm screaming bloody murder. And he throws me a towel and puts it over my mouth, screaming into the towel. He said, meanwhile, my wife, Sharon, she went crying out of the room. She couldn't stand to see me like that. 10 minutes later or so, he says, okay, take a break. And Sharon came back in, and Sharon goes over to get me a glass of water and brings it over to me. And I asked her, I said, come here, I'm laying down. And she bends down, and I said, me and my big mouth. But
you know what, that angel, like, that's what's still in my brain, that angel that you knew was in your life. Like,
oh yeah,
it's
yes.
almost like the world stops around you and a light that person just comes to you.
Mhm.
And without question, what their purpose is in life, to give you that message.
And I had asked everybody at the facility who that was.
Yeah.
And I described what she looked like, and nobody knew who she was. Apparently she didn't sign in, or I didn't know.
Wow. And you know what? She may have not even been there physically for everybody else. She may have just been an actual angel that you only saw. I don't know it to be true, but I'm just saying.
It's very possible.
There are people that's what we do. That's what, that's the thing. Remember that program, Touched by Angels? Is that what it was called?
I think so, yes.
Roma Downey Jr., she was on that, and I forget what the woman was. But I want to ask you, JoAnn, did you have any encounterings about somebody or some being coming into your life that brought you some messages?
Oh my. I felt so blessed through the whole thing. I can't think of anyone in particular at the moment, but after only being down here for 6 months, and we had already found our church family, and I can remember the ride from the hospital over to the rehab center. And when they brought me into my room, there were so many flowers on the gurney along with me that you couldn't see me at all. And I have no idea where they came from, but they came from people who, I may have just barely met, that wanted to make sure that they were there for me. And they wished me the best.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. We only have a few more minutes. I personally, I think we have a lot more to cover and conversations. So if it's okay with both of you, I'd love for Judy to set up another show with both of you so we can continue the conversation. And actually, I think it'd be very important to bring a doctor into to bring this roundabout together about the different scenarios. I mean, we logically know the different scenarios of Judy's in the 20% where you live a good lifestyle and there is no preventing having a stroke. I mean, you're gonna have one. And time is of the essence when you suffer a stroke, because the time, Dr. Beculus has told us many times, really determines the outcome in recovery. And there's so many technical things that they could do nowadays, not only with a clot busting drug, but now they can go in and pull out the clot, which Dr. Beculus spoke about.
I think it was called thrombology or something like that.
Thrombology or
Something like that.
Yeah. So it really is really important to kind of bring that all together with a doctor on the show. So I hope that you guys will allow us to do that. And then of course Bob, he didn't have a whole live a wonderful lifestyle. But I think what's important is the fact that you're both here and you're both doing your purpose to share with everybody your experience about strokes, and there's so much to talk about, especially your recoveries, because the stroke in my world is an experience. You suffered. It doesn't determine who you are. It doesn't determine what you're going to do moving forward. But it's so important to enjoy the moments and to hear about your recovery and how you're living your life. You're both living a purpose now. I know, JoAnn, you wrote a book. Talk to us about your book that you wrote.
Actually, this happened when I was just about ready to leave rehab. A number of the nurses and doctors had encouraged me to write something, because 25 years ago when this happened, there really wasn't a lot of people that would tell you things that were hopeful. And one of the things that I found from writing the book was that there's a grieving process that stroke survivors, if you want to continue and to find that hope, at least in my estimation, you have to come to terms with the grief, because who you were before is not going to be who you are now. But the thing that they don't tell you is that you may be even better than you were before.
Yes.
Your attitude is better. Your gratitude is better. And so Trapped Within kind of chronicles everything along the lines of healing from a stroke, and then what it is that you do afterwards. And Bob and I had been in a conversation a number of different times when we first met. And RenéMarie, I didn't know this about you, but we also worked at the hospitals with stroke survivors who had just come through the throes of it and are now laying there going, now what? And so at first when I was doing it, to look at me, I didn't look like I had a stroke, and I felt like maybe people who are going through it and still have, obvious disabilities might feel like I'm really a fraud and I wouldn't understand where they were. But the medical people told me, I was a good candidate to see these people because they can see that it's possible to come back and have a life, not an existence, but actually a life.
And in my foundation, one of the things that we have on our bucket list, which honestly, I haven't had a chance to really delve into, and I know you'll both love this and you're both right on board with it. I really think it's important to work with hospitals that if someone someone that suffers a stroke to support the families immediately,
Yes.
to let them know, listen, we don't know the determining factor of how things are going to work out. Pardon me, my landscaper. We're not doctors, but we are here to show you that we suffered a stroke, major strokes. We are still here, and look what we've accomplished in life.
Yes.
Look what we've accomplished. So we just want to bring you a little bit of hope that, a glimmer of hope, to know that anything is possible. Anything is possible when you believe. And Bob and JoAnn, you'll both agree with me that it's not going to be an easy road. It's not
No.
going to be an easy road. But if you want it hard enough and enough, I was just watching the Derek Jeter documentary on ESPN Plus. Phenomenal, inspirational documentary, because when we think of Derek Jeter, we think of this prime Yankee who could do no wrong and was an extraordinary talented baseball player. But when I looked at it and I saw that when he was in the minor leagues and he got drafted out of high school, he had horrible seasons, which I had no idea. And they started to talk about, I don't know whether he's gonna be good for the Yankees. And it wasn't until one angel saw him and said, I forget what his name was, he was the manager at the time, said that he's got it. He's got it. Somebody saw in him that he had the potential and allowed him the experience to grow and to get used to the surroundings and situation and pressures of being in the big leagues. So it's not easy, and in life isn't easy. It's not only that we suffered a stroke, right? It's that life isn't easy, and I've learned in my life that what are you going to do? You're going to back down and go crawl, because I used to crawl in a corner, just so everybody knows. I used to crawl in a corner.
Can't picture that.
Yeah, but it was right after my stroke, and I was in a world where I didn't know. I couldn't. My brain needed to be defragmented, like Dominic Cordelessa helped me to do. So it wasn't until after that I learned all these tools in the tool belt, which I talk about all the time with Dominic, that I was able to start to trust in myself enough to accomplish what I wanted. And even when I move forward and I don't succeed the way Derek Jeter didn't succeed in his in his first few years in the Yankees organization, but I wasn't. I was afraid to fail, but I had that unconditional support from Dom to take a step back and say, okay, this didn't work. Let's move forward and do this. But I wouldn't have been able to accomplish where I am today, the successes that I've had today, if it wasn't for me learning the lessons and having angels like Dominic Cordelessa. That's why I call him an angel as well. I have many angels in my life, but to be able to grow and to learn and to be successful. So I would love to work with all our stroke survivor families on the language of love, family, to say, to have like this is what we have to do. We have to have a Zoom meeting with everybody from around the country and around the world, Judy, and really talk about, okay, group together. There's power in the voices and numbers, and say to them, okay, how do we approach the hospitals? Because to the hospitals are, and I understand this liability and all those types of things that they're not able to provide. But I think it really would be important to let people know that when someone has a stroke, here we are, call us, text us, email us, because we want to bring you that hope that is so crucial in
It is crucial.
in a stroke. So we're out of time today, but I want to give you the last moments, and I hope that you'll accept our invitation once again for Judy to continue this conversation with a doctor on Judy. But I want to give JoAnn the final words. And I want to wait before we go to JoAnn, Bob. I want to talk about your Facebook group that you lead, right? Do you lead that group?
JoAnn does.
JoAnn, oh,
And that's how they met.
Yeah.
Bob actually referred JoAnn to me through that group.
Don't count me out, right? That's what I'm talking about. Don't count me out. Okay. So yes, so that's wonderful. So JoAnn, tell us a little bit about that, because I want to make sure we plug that as well.
Well, Bob is very integral in what we do. We met a couple of years ago when we first started doing this. And what we do is we allow stroke survivors to tell their stories. And we also invite other people, medical people, people in all the different professions that affect what happens to people that have had strokes. We've had some wonderful guests and just really enjoyed doing it. Bob became very interested because he really feels, and I do too, that people that are in the arts have a different way of doing their physical therapy that takes them beyond the therapy into a realm that's enjoyable for them and allows the repetition to continue to grow. So we've had a lot of fun with the shows that we've done, and hopefully we'll continue. And what you're talking about with the hospitals is something that Bob and I are involved in right now, trying to think something through to make sure that all of the hospitals, whether they're large learning hospitals or something that's just in a small town, they will all have the information. So I hope we can talk about that.
Absolutely, we're all in. And nowadays it's so technology. They could call you in the middle of the night, which I am open to have a FaceTime with, just to say, like, we're here. Like, you don't have to get in the car. You don't have to go. All that stuff is instantaneously now, where we could show the support and love, and the truth is that we don't even need to say much. They just need to see us, see where we are, so that we're all together. So I think on our website, because you do your thing, we do our thing, everybody else does their thing. It would be awesome, and I would love to start a Facebook page, but a website page, so that everybody knows. We could share with the hospitals. You want numbers? You want people to reach out to? Here's the link. Go here. Call anybody. Or reach out to anybody. So we're going to start that. We're going to definitely start that, JoAnn and Bob, and we can't wait. Judy, thank you for doing your God work, your angel work, because you always.
I just want to say, JoAnn, could you mention the group website that you are on, that Bob and you work together on?
Yes, it's the Facebook group. If you want to find us, it's DCMO. It's too long to spell out, don't count me out, but it's DCMO.talks, and that's the group, and it will take you right to our page.
Perfect. So we can't wait to continue this conversation. Does anybody else have anything wheeling through their brain? Because I never want to end the show with, and then you go back and you say, oh, I should have said this. Bob, JoAnn, is there any final comments you want to give before we roll out?
I would just like to say, be consistent with your rehab. Do it daily, every other day, whatever works best for you, but just be consistent. And what helped me out the most, I think, was we documented my successes. We kept track of, when did I first move my finger? When was I able to first wrap my arm around and hug my wife? Just because you're going to go through stages where you just think you're plateauing. And that's the time when you bring out your documentation and you look back where you were and where you are now, and just keep working at it, and you'll get there. It'll, you know, it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's very worth it.
Yeah, it's extreme, crucial. It really is important.
The one thing that I'd like to add is that I don't believe that I don't think you do either from listening to you talk this morning. I don't believe in coincidences, but I definitely believe in providence. And I think there's a reason for all of us to be here together.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and I we do too. And that's why Judy just kind of navigates and brings together this show, and we still have work to do together. You know what I'm saying? So, we're going to continue to talk. We're going to continue to address the working with the hospitals. I am going to create a Facebook website page so that you guys could write your little blurb, and then have your website and have your, I think it's really important. I'm not one about, looking individually. I look at the whole unit, the whole world. It's powerful to work together, and that's what, in my world, God wants us to do, come together so that we could help each other. We can help each other. I think that's the bottom line in life. Life is short. Life is a gift. So I really think I really believe that. So thank you to Judy once again for doing it. Thank you, Jim, in the back office, for technical in the back studio. We're gonna close on out, but I want to thank Bob and Judy and Bob once again, and JoAnn and Bob and Judy as well, and Jim, for this extraordinary, really important show. And we're going to touch more upon the differences in the scenarios of how they got there. And we're really going to touch on hope. It's really important. We're going to continue to talk about their recovery process and how they got to where they are today, and continuing to do. We can't wait to have them back. So on 3, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I get amazed at the God work, because we work so hard on creating these shows and bringing them together, and I can't tell you how proud I am of our library of shows that we have on our website and YouTube, and with Jim and Village Connection Network. So we're so proud of everything we're doing together, and we could not do it. Welcome to the family, JoAnn and Bob. That's what we tell everybody.
Thank you.
It's all about family. It's all about working together to help people, and that's the truth. So we always blow our kisses on 3. 1, 2, 3. Bye, everybody. We'll see you soon.
God bless you all.
Bye. God bless.
God bless.
Mi amor, yo no entiendo por qué tú más que nadie sabes qué pasó en mi vida. Yo no sé qué tú piensas, yo no sé lo que hay.